get started reading, I just want to ask you guys a question. How many of you are going to be on a commercial aircraft between the time I finish and the end of the year? Can you raise your hand? Wow. Okay, well, you might want to change that after. So, this is the 7th book. All 7 so far have been Amazon bestsellers. It's called Cypher Ghost. People who refer to cyber are actually using the wrong word. It's cipher. And it's chapter 4. It's about a young woman by the name of Anne Silvey, who is at Thanksgiving weekend in her freshman year, and she's about to get on a commercial aircraft. November 23rd, 12:05 p.m., San Francisco International Airport, domestic terminal number 3. Anne felt a rush of relief as she exited the taxi at SFO. She approached the ticket counter, standing in a long line for nearly 20 minutes. The clerk held out his hand and she passed him her driver's license and stated her flight number. The clerk responded by printing her boarding pass for Skylark Airlines Flight 982, flying from San Francisco to Reagan National. I'm checking one suitcase. She visited the Harbor Village dim sum vendor and bought herself dinner. Then she walked to the security checkpoint where she stood in line for another hour. As the line moved, slowly twisting toward the checkpoint, she glanced at her watch. Her brown hair fell into her eyes and she straightened her ponytail. Finally, she reached the guard's seat and handed him her boarding pass and driver's license. She was happy thinking about her first semester at Stanford. She was on her way to acing 3 of her 5 courses, the important ones, in computer forensics. And she'd done this honestly without having to hack the grading system. She knew that hacking the school service would be dangerous for anyone majoring in computer forensics. She patted down the aisle to seat 24C and stowed her computer under her seat. And she watched others find their seats on a flight. 5 hours and she'd be home with Cassie and Lee, her adopted parents. She thought, I have so much to tell them. The other seats in her row were unoccupied. She stretched out. As the aircraft finished loading and as passengers and the flight attendants performed their funny version of what to do if the worst were to happen, she nodded off. She'd intended to work on a midterm paper once they reached the altitude of 10,000 feet and the crew told them it was safe to turn on their electronic devices. She felt the throttle thrust to full. She could feel the force of the engines push her deeper into her seat as the beast lifted into the air. She used her feet to pull her notebook to where she could reach it. Time to work. The paper was still mostly an outline of itself. It was an analysis of the famous Apple versus FBI case and several of the follow-on cases with their political and practical implications. Anne's major argument was that if the United States outlawed or crippled encryption, hackers from other countries would still have encryption. And since there was no way to keep encryption products from being downloaded from foreign software vendors into computers of U.S. citizens, there would be no effective way to control the end result. Even worse, without encryption in the United States, foreign hackers could easily be able to hack into the computers of the United States and steal bank account information from normal users. She added a bit of flesh to the bones of her argument, providing a few coding examples as illustrations of the point, and then sat thinking about what to write next. When it happened, it was sudden. The aircraft jolted and then went silent. At first, no one reacted. Then all the passengers went silent. No noise except for the wind outside. Everyone was now abuzz. Anne realized the engines had stopped. She froze in fear, anticipating the crash that would most certainly take her life. For a few seconds, all she could think of was whether her death would be painful or just too sudden to reveal. Then she found herself acting without realizing that she was doing something about her situation. Her notebook computer still worked, ruling out an EMP attack. And since the engines had all died simultaneously, mechanical or electrical sabotage was unlikely. Anne opened a secure area of her notebook where she stored all of her hacker tools. She'd been using the on-flight Wi-Fi and hoped that the flight control system was within the same computer. It was, but she found it was completely open. No password was required. She assumed that meant that someone had opened the back door and failed to lock it behind them. A hacker had pawned the aircraft. She needed no hacker tools to penetrate the flight control system. Her steps were quite different from those she assumed the hacker had used, and used a hacker toolkit to insert her own rootkit into the flight control system. It took almost 2 minutes of steady pounding on the keyboard to get her to the cockpit control system. What she found was nothing. No activity in the cockpit. She read through the buffers looking to see if the pilot or the co-pilot were even alive, and yes, they were. But the aircraft was now beyond their control. And looked further and found questionable commands within the buffer and more in the command stack, a few minutes from being issued. She assumed that the control of the plane had been permanently altered and moved to a third party. She inserted a reset to default command. It appeared in the command list, but was immediately deleted. Someone was active at the other end of the system, holding it secure from her attempts. She tried fighting the hidden hacker, but the other hacker withheld control of the aircraft from her. And the aircraft was now heading down at a steeper angle, falling faster. Passengers screamed. Anne thought, I'm going to die. She decided to do something desperate and drastic. She turned the flight control system off, totally off, then rebooted it. It might take a minute or more before it would be usable. She unbuckled her seatbelt, gripped the aisle's seat backs to maintain her balance, and staggered to the rear of the aircraft where the flight attendants were buckled into their own seats. Listen, I'm a hacker. I just rebooted the aircraft's flight control system, so now the pilots can manually control the plane. It had been taken over by another hacker, Black Hat. Please tell the pilots they can save us now. They stared at her in horror, as if she was an enemy. Now, tell the pilots the aircraft works again, but they won't be able to control the plane until the system's finished booting. One of the aircraft spoke into a hand phone. Anne held tight to the nearest seat back, waiting for something to happen, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see out one of the windows. The ground was getting visibly closer by the second. The aircraft lurched, but then steadied, no longer losing altitude. Anne took a deep breath. She returned to her seat. Once again, she hacked into the flight control system and changed the passwords to new ones only she could guess. That might keep the hacker from reestablishing control. She shook her head. It had been too close. She thought of sitting back to work on her paper, but her hands were too shaky to key anything. She broke down and cried in her seat for several minutes. Then she watched over the flight control system until the plane's wheels touched down at Reagan National. As Anne prepared to debark, 3 men wearing dark suits approached. One said, Anne Sashakovich, hand me your computer. She looked at them. Who are you? Law enforcement. The computer. Now. She handed it over to one of the men. The other placed handcuffs over her wrist. They dragged her from her seat. She was perp-launched off the plane.